Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Caton, and before I begin my presentation here, I will give a heads up and apologize for any background noises that you might hear, like my dog or my neighbors outside or anything. But we will get started with my presentation here. A brief introduction of myself. My name is Thomas Caton. I'm currently a senior, majoring in communications with a concentration in radio and TV. Not only is this presentation for Strike a Spark, but it is also my honors thesis for the University Honors Program. And as you can see, the title of my presentation here, Exploring How Technology Has Changed the Relationship Between Print, the Computer, and the Radio/TV media. So a brief introduction about this project. I chose to pursue this topic because, like I said, I'm a communications major, and I do find this topic to be very interesting as how the numerous technological advances that have occurred over the centuries helped us improve the way we currently live today. Like I said, being a communications major has shown me technology plays a rather huge role within our departments. And we can all assume that the advances made in technology has profoundly changed the way television, radio, internet, and newspapers, all that fun stuff, function today. So, you know that saying, there's a first time for everything. There really is. The first newspaper to ever be printed in the United States was The Public Occurrences, both foreign and domestic, in September of 1690. And it may look like I've misspelled some words, but no, that is how this paper was spelled back then. However, due to the paper's anti-British tone, it was suppressed after only its first issue. Then in the mid-1890s, building on techniques physicists were using to study electromagnetic waves, and I know I'm going to butcher this person's name, Guglielmo Marconi, however it's pronounced, developed the first apparatus for long-distance radio communication. Then on December 23rd, 1900, the Canadian inventor Reginald A. Fessenden became the first person to send audio by means of electromagnetic waves, successfully transmitting over a distance of about 1.6 kilometers. And 6 years later, on Christmas Eve, 1906, he became the first person to make a public wireless broadcast. It was a good Christmas that year for him. And by 1910, these various wireless systems had come to be known as what we now call the radio. And I couldn't fit everything onto one slide, so continued. The first electronic television set was first successfully demonstrated in San Francisco on September 7th, 1927, excuse me. This system was designed by a 21-year-old inventor, Philo Taylor Farnsworth. Again, I apologize for butchering the name. He did live in a house without electricity until he was about 14 years old. So technological advances, like I've been saying, there's been many over the last centuries. We can see that. We've gone through times in history from the manuscript age to the printing press age, to the invention of the radio, television, and so much more. So first up, print mass media. The printing press and other technological advances related to the manufacturing and distribution of paper did lead to print being established as one of the first mass mediums in history. As you saw in the previous slide, the manuscript age, this was a period in human history that immediately predated the advent of mass media and began around 3500 BC with the introduction of written texts and lasted until the printing revolution of 1450. So the manuscript age lasted about 5,000 years. And before writing became a popular thing, people from the past drew on walls in caves, they made pottery, jewelry, and other things as a form of expressionism to express themselves, their culture, wherever they lived. And a quick fun fact, in the United States, about 3.1 billion books, 1,400 newspapers, and 19,000 magazines are published each year. Print mass media continued, so Johannes Gutenberg was a German goldsmith and printer, and he is often cited as the inventor of the printing press. However, he really did not invent much. Most of the technology needed to print, such as movable type, had already existed and had been in use for hundreds of years before Gutenberg invented the printing press in the year 1450. The mass production and distribution of text had occurred about 700 years prior in East Asia. And the Chinese, they used this wood block printing method to produce and distribute Buddhist texts. So here we have a picture of the Gutenberg press, because that's what it was often referred to when it was invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the year 1450. A lot of work going on, as you can see. Obviously, we don't have to deal with that today. And this, of course, led to books. With the invention of the printing press, an explosion of printing does prove that print was the first mass medium to exist in history. And like I said, this led to publishing and fabrication of books to be completed in a much faster manner. And here we have a timeline of important events regarding the printing press. In 10 years prior, 1440, Gutenberg began to experiment with printing in Strasbourg, France. And in 1450, the Gutenberg press, also known as the printing press, was invented. Between the years of 1454 and 1500, approximately 30,000 books and pamphlets were published in Europe. Also during this time, more than 20 million individual books were printed as well. And throughout the 1600s, approximately 150 to 200 million books were published in Europe. And it's absolutely fascinating to see that large of a number, considering the time when not a lot of technology was around at the time. And so, of course, this led to newspapers, and we all know what newspapers are. They are credited as being the chronicle of daily life in society. They provide a coverage of local, national, and international events, always keeping us updated on events that occur both inside and outside our communities. The first newspaper to ever emerge occurred in Paris, France in the year 1631. And of course, this led to other newspapers being established throughout Europe. And another fun fact, as of 2018, there are currently 1,279 daily newspapers printed throughout the United States. And then another timeline regarding newspapers. As we saw earlier, 1690, the first newspaper was printed in the United States in Boston, that Public Occurrences. Like I said, it was suppressed after its first issue due to its anti-British tone. 1704, the Boston Newsletter was the first newspaper to be regularly published in the United States. In 1721, James Franklin, Benjamin Franklin's older brother, published the New England Courant in Boston. In 1784, the first daily newspaper was published in the United States for the colonies, known at the time, the Pennsylvania Pocket and Daily Advertiser. In the late 1800s, many newspapers practiced this phenomenon known as yellow journalism, which basically is a form of competition just to get people to look and possibly buy their newspapers. In 1955, the Village Voice is published in Greenwich Village, New York, and marks the beginning of the rise of alternative newspapers. In 1980, the Columbus Dispatch became the first newspaper to publish its content online, and in 1982, USA Today was launched. And so this led to the birth of the radio. Technology started to become much more stable, and various businesses and governments wanted to expand these devices. They saw the value in it, that this device would soon become known as the radio. In the year 1916, David Sarnoff, a former Marconi telegraph operator, proposed that radios should be a household necessity. And his plan to make radios a household necessity was very successful, very effective for all American households. And fun fact, there are 15,330 radio stations and 30,367 licensed broadcast outlets in the United States. Another timeline of important events regarding the radio. In 1909, the first commercial radio station signs on the air as an experimental venture by Dr. Charles David Harold in San Jose, California, which he primarily used to advertise for his new school of radio. In 1919, the first non-commercial radio station goes on the air at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. 1920, KDKA, see, Pittsburgh can be famous. Station is often credited as signaling the beginning of the age of commercial broadcast radio and received financial backing from Westinghouse, a major company at the time, and gained much national attention for airing the 1920 presidential election. In 1921, the U.S. Commerce Department licenses 5 radio stations. In 1922, the first broadcasting network is created by a New York station, WEAF, to give advertisers a discount and allow them to reach a larger audience all at once. And in 1923, more than 600 commercial and non-commercial radio stations were in operation at the time, and about 550,000 radio receivers have been sold to U.S. consumers. Then in 1925, 5.5 million radios were now being used throughout the United States, making the radio a powerful mass medium. In the late 1920s, the National Broadcasting Company, NBC, was the largest radio network at the time and began to form affiliate relationships with independent stations that would broadcast NBC's content to supplement their own programming. And today, that practice is still being used by most radio and television networks. And of course, this leads to the invention of the television. Humans have enjoyed watching and listening to something at the same time for at least 140,000 years. Believe it or not, humans have been entertained and informed by watching and listening to something at the same time, to the things that surrounded them. It was time for an invention to be created that would allow humans to both watch and listen to something at the same time, like I said, hence the invention of the television. And another fun fact, there are about 1.7 billion TV sets around the world. Then another timeline of important events regarding the television. In the late 1800s, the cathode ray tube was invented, which serves as the basic picture tube for later television sets. In 1923, I'm probably going to butcher this name too, but Vladimir Zworykin develops the iconoscope, which was the first television camera tube capable of converting light rays into electrical signals. And at the same time, Philo Farnsworth patents an electronic image dissector tube, and John Baird improves on Nipkow's disc. Baird, who was working in Great Britain at the time, transmitted the first live moving pictures in 1926. Farnsworth, who was in the United States, transmits a picture of a dollar sign in the year 1927. Between the years of 1935 and 1939, public demonstrations, of television capture the attention of people around the world, culminating in the famous demonstration of television by RCA at the 1939 World's Fair. In 1940, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, adopts standards for television transmissions that help commercialize and turn television into a mass medium. Between the 1940s and the 1970s, television was in its golden age, dominating the visual media markets. And the late 1970s to 1980s, satellite and cable providers challenged network television's dominance. And then, of course, led to the internet and digital media age. The internet's not really that old. The first prototype was launched in the 1960s. And the World Wide Web was created in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee, a British scientist who was working at CERN at the time. The internet and digital media age began in 1990 and continues to present day. And fun fact, as of January 2021, there are just about 1.2 billion websites on the internet. 1,197,982,359 websites, just to be exact. So in conclusion here, it is obvious that technological advances have been made over the past centuries, and more technological advances are being made today, and they'll continue to be made in the future as well. Technology has seriously changed the way we currently view the computer, the internet, newspapers, television, and the radio. And I hope that my presentation here has brought some insight and perhaps gave a little information about the technological advances that have been made, ranging from the printing press to the creation of the internet. Perhaps maybe you didn't know some of this information before. And then I have all my work cited here. I have 3 pages to be exact. Very extensive research, as you can see. A lot of time and effort went into this. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of you for viewing my PowerPoint and my honors thesis. Thank you very much, and goodbye.